Hey all, Robert Knowles here. I'm joined by Han, and we're going to explore the Civil War. I hope you enjoy. Hello all, and welcome to a brand new series here on History with R&R. We're going to be talking with Han, and Han is going to walk us through the Civil War. Me being Canadian, we didn't learn a lot about it, so I'll be learning along with you all. There we go. I can speak English language. It's going to be a learning experience. So first of all, Han, introduce yourself. And Han's been on the channel before, but Han, take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm Han, aka Hanstar, from the channel Hanstar and the will sometime be released Hanstar Adventures. My pedigree, if you want to call it a pedigree, I was born and raised in the southern United States. I have family members that were on both sides of the Civil War, and where I live, you can't throw a rock without hitting something to do with the Civil War.
All right. Well, and you're more experienced than me because, well, I live in Canada. You can throw many rocks and not hit anything about the Civil War. Just saying. So when you say family feuds, or family fights, you guys took it to a whole new level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And my family took it to a whole other level because there was um, three of four brothers fought for the Union and one brother fought for the Confederacy.
No, there's always got to be that one brother that's got to.
So I'm technically a carpetbagger.
Okay.
My great grandpa didn't move to South Georgia until Reconstruction. He
Okay.
actually fought for the Union
Oh, so
during the
you were
Civil
a
War.
blue coat.
So I'm technically a carpetbagger, even though my family's been here for generations and generations now. But
Gotcha. All right. So I believe this episode we're just going to cover the build up and what was kind of going on that kind of started set the powder keg off, and then we'll continue on from there. So take it away, Han. You're the one that knows what they're talking about.
first, we'll deal with the elephant in the room.
All right.
Yes, the Civil War did have to do with slavery, but that was not the only reason for the Civil War. Lots of things you read, they say it was strictly about slavery, and while I can't lie and say a good portion of it wasn't to do with slavery, it wasn't everything. Um, it was more about states' rights than it was just about slavery.
Yeah.
That did involve slavery, for better or worse. And I'll be the first to say I do not obviously condone slavery, and I think it was
Yes.
horrible.
Yes.
But we're looking back on a time a long time ago where things were obviously different than they
Yes.
are now.
For
Um,
better or worse.
well, yeah. Um, and you have to go back to that time and think of at that time, uh, the South was a very agrarian society, um, whereas the North was more factories and stuff like that.
Industrial.
Post industrial revolution, the North was way more industrial. The South, with its big open land, not as dense a population as the North, was very agrarian. So, and especially cotton. Cotton
Yeah.
was a big thing in the South, and unfortunately, you need labor for cotton, and you know, there were people forced to be labor for cotton, aka slaves.
Yes.
Um, but at the time, um, the cotton industry was actually probably greater than what the oil industry was in the late 20th century.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the South at that time provided 70% of the cotton to Great Britain,
Yeah.
as well as providing it to obviously many other places. Um, so you end up in in a scenario where there is a question about slavery, because you can't talk about the Civil War and not talk about slavery.
Absolutely.
And there was chatter in the North about slavery, because again, it wasn't as big a deal in the North because they had machines to do stuff.
Yeah.
At that time, there were not yet machines to do harvesting and things like that like there are now. So if you have 200 acres of land in the South, obviously you need field workers to do that. Whereas in the North, it's like, well, I don't care about that because we have a factory.
Yeah.
We have machines to do things that we want to do up here. So as there kind of got to be a fervor and talk about doing something about slavery in the United States, obviously that would have directly affected the southern states
Yeah.
and basically their way of life as far as how they made money. That would be like saying, "Oh, well, you make money on the internet. We're just going to cut your internet connection off."
Yeah.
To put into kind of modern standards. And again, it's a horrible thing, but at that time, slavery wasn't really that big a deal. Not to make it sound horrible like that, but I mean, all over the world, people had slaves, and that was what the South used as labor. But then it gets down to things like you have the North looking towards abolishing slavery. You have the South, for lack of a better way, needing to keep slaves to keep making money.
Yeah.
So it's almost like captains of industry versus farmers. And you got farmers that are rich. I mean, making a ton of money. So in a fail swoop, you want to say, "Oh, well, you can still be rich up there, but I can't be rich down here anymore." And then it got to be a thing where as the United States expanded, then it was going to be a question of, well, these new states that were coming into the Union, would they be slave states or would they be not? So every new state, it was like a fight to would they allow the ownership of slaves or not allow the ownership of slaves. And so you already have basically the southern states versus the northern states, and as more states get involved or moved, new states get involved. The North feared that if slavery continued to expand to new territories, they would inevitably join the southern states, making the North irrelevant. So it got to be a penis measuring contest, basically, between the North and the South of, well, what new states are going to align with what we believe in.
Yeah. And to put it, I think this is a good, and you can correct me, but the simple layman answer to, well, we need field work, well, just pay them and be done with it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So yes, that is the simple answer, and it is the right answer. The problem there is, okay, let's look at our modern world, right? You can go to a major store and gets a bag of potatoes for $10.99, or you can go to Walmart and get it for $7.99. Right? Most of us go to Walmart.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a cheaper option. That was what the fight, I think, ideally was. It's not a matter of these people will no longer be rich if there's no slaves. They will be less rich if there isn't slaves. because they've got to pay.
Well,
So
and
they
it's
always want to do the cheaper option. It is a
yeah.
human default. It's the cheaper option. Even in modern day, if you look at most like bidding for contracts, whether it's in the construction world or security world or anywhere where you have to bid on something to get the contract to do the work, a lot of it isn't who can do the job the best. A lot of it, the person who wins the contract is the person who will do it cheaper.
Oh yeah.
Right? So that was the argument going on, is, well, why would I do that when I can do this and it's cheaper?
Well,
Right? It's the same thing with why we move all of our industry overseas, because it's cheaper. Um,
and the interesting thing was at the time, and 3/5 of the wealthiest individuals in the United States at the time were from the southern states because cotton was worth so much money at that time.
mhm.
And obviously they were involved with slaves. Um, the North was more invested in industry and entrepreneurship. But the funny thing was, there was a very poor working class.
Yes.
The people that, so I mean, it wasn't slavery, but at the same time, they paid them as minimal, like your
Well,
example you
even
were
in
just saying.
let's go modern
Yeah,
day. If
they
you've ever sat on a negotiating team for a contract, like when I used to sit on the negotiation team for security to get the guards a raise, it's like pulling teeth to get yeah, the corporation just made $1 billion, but to get a $2 raise across the board is like pulling teeth. It hasn't changed. I'm sorry, but the mentality hasn't changed. It's the same. It's just, I mean, look at the minimum wage in the United States and Canada, right? Could the company afford to pay $15 an hour? Yes. Will they? No. Unless they have to, right? Um or $10 an hour or whatever. It's not a matter of can they afford to do so. It's a matter of why would they, right? That means less money for them. You're eating into their pocketbook. And that issue hasn't changed. We've just changed the structure. That's all.
and then you go on to the subject of states' rights, which is still a topic in the United States today.
Yes.
Is on a local level wanting to be able to make your own laws and define things that happen in your local government and area without the federal government stepping in on everything. And it was the same back then.
Yeah.
They they didn't like the fact that the federal government was trying to step in and tell the southern states what they could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
Because in their opinion, no, this is a state level thing. Y'all are the federal government. This is a states' rights thing. We should be able to decide what we want to do in our state.
Yeah.
And it kind of all came to a head when President Lincoln got elected.
Mm.
That's what really made everything come to a head. Was he was actually a Republican candidate, and at that time the Republican Party was a new founded party in the United States, and he ran against Stephen Douglas of the Democratic Party. They did debate a lot about slavery, which obviously didn't make him very popular in the South. The funny thing about the election is um, Lincoln won the presidential election without the support of a single Southern state.
Oh, wow.
Um,
That'll do it.
and a lot of things you read, they're like, well, him getting elected wasn't necessarily the primary cause for the war, but it basically sent the warning out of, yeah, this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
and I
It made
forget,
them
and
irrelevant.
I can't quote the numbers, but in a lot of the southern states, he was not even on the ballot, and somehow he got elected. So again, that just goes with, and we've seen this in the United States previous years, questions of the legitimacy of a presidential election and things like that. So that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And Lincoln getting elected, and we'll now get into the start of the Civil War. Lincoln getting elected made South Carolina call a state convention where they voted unanimously to secede from the United States on the 20th of December, 1860. The so-called quote-unquote cotton states of Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas followed suit and seceded in January and February 1861. That's when they all got together and formed what would become to be known as the Confederate States of America on February 4th, 1861. The Confederates attacked Fort Sumter in April. Lincoln called on all the states to send forces to recapture federal properties. Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Tennessee were not willing to send forces against their neighbors, so in turn they seceded. So now you have South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Tennessee have now all seceded.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm not going to take up arms against my neighbor.
And then you end up taking up arms against your neighbor anyway.
Well, yeah. Yeah, technically you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Joy. All right. So I think that's a good spot to leave it. So the war is starting. The sides have been drawn. Next episode we'll kind of break into more on the starting, the rollout, some of the first major things that take place once the ball has been started to roll, and we'll go from there. So thank you, Han. Anything you want to plug? Now is the time.
I'm Hanstar, youtube.com/Hanstar. We do Name That Tune, Jackbox Game Night. Eventually, I'm also going to launch a channel called Hanstar Adventures, youtube.com/Hanstar Adventures. Other than that, you can see me on Rob's channel and some other places around the internet.
Sounds great. All right.
I don't have an OnlyFans. I'm sorry.
I think we're all thankful for that. All right. And with that, thank you. Have a good one. Take her easy, folks.